Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the NBA Triple Double Show, powered by SportsMemo. I am Moneyline Matt, otherwise known as Matt Koalas from SportsMemo and Wager Talk, and I will be your host today due to our fearless leader, Ronald Cabang, being out sick. Get well soon, Ronald. Gonna miss you, my man, and definitely go over to SportsMemo and check out some of his stuff. I do have my good friend and top handicapper, Jeff Michaels, over with us, but before I get into everything, we do have some solid promo codes that I have to throw your way. Right now, we still have $2 Tuesday going on, and some of our top handicappers over at SportsMemo and Wager Talk are included. You can go and get Rob Vinciletti, who is rocking 100% college football 5% best bets, and AKA Mr. Perfect, Jesse Schul, who has a 5% NFL play and is calling it the ultimate of the ultimate. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds good to me, and I think it'll sound good to you as well for $2. Another thing that we have going on, which is very important for someone like myself, Jeff Michaels and Ronald Cabang, is the Sport 50 All Access code. That is $50 off all access for this month. Again, you're getting $50 off that, and that includes every single sport. Someone like myself, I do the NFL, NBA, and UFC. So it's nice to get every single sport. Don't got to worry about buying one single play or anything like that. But again, guys, went over those promo codes. They're great value. Go check them out. And I think it's time to introduce my boy, Jeff Michaels. Come on in, Jeff. How you doing today, buddy?
Good. How are you, Matt? A pleasure to be here. And, it feels weird doing what you guys started calling it a triple triple. It feels weird doing a triple double and actually being here with you.
Yeah, I know. We definitely miss our boy Ronald. I don't think there's anyone in the game that I respect more than Ronald Cabang. Definitely check him out on Twitter. He's always putting out good stats, statistics, things like that. But in all honesty, I'm feeling pretty good today. I hit a plus 10,000 parlay last night on the Clippers and Trailblazers game. So I'm feeling pretty hot today. I'm ready to break down this slate.
Hey, bring the luck to the viewers too, right? That's what we're shooting for.
Hey, amen, brother. And our first game on this slate, we're talking about, one of your teams. We got the Philadelphia 76ers and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now, that is a minus 3.5 spread for the Cleveland Cavaliers, a 210 over under. And in this matchup, the 76ers are still without James Harden and Tyrese Maxey, but do have Joel Embiid plugged back into that lineup. And this is also a 76ers team with a 3-game win streak. As for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're still kind of a team that has the injury bug right now. They're going to be without Jarrett Allen, Kevin Love, and potentially missing Lamar Stevens here. This is also a Cavs team who is coming off a loss on the road to the Toronto Raptors. And Jeff, this is your hometown team, so I want to come to you first. How do you look at this game?
Yeah, I obviously like what the Cavs have been doing this year, but this line says a lot, and I'm interested to see what happens in this game because, like you mentioned, no Jarrett Allen, no Kevin Love, potentially no Lamar Stevens, and yes, Philadelphia gets Embiid back up there, but still having Harden and Maxey out of the lineup, I'm kind of surprised that Cleveland's a 3.5-point favorite, but there is something to be said. 8-1 against the spread at home this season, and they're putting up nearly 117 points in those games, allowing 106. But shout out to the Gold Sheet, and my dad puts out the NBA stat logs or stat pages every day on Twitter at CalSportsLV. But something I used a lot last season was looking at the bottom two lines of that stat sheet, which is the results over the last 2 weeks. I don't focus too much on it early in the season because everything seems like the last 2 weeks early in the season. But they're 5-2. Cleveland has been defensively efficient, but they've been allowing more points than Philly has. And in the last 2 weeks, they're allowing under 103 points and under 102 at home, better than Philly in those games. But they are playing a lot. They're playing 7 games in the last 11 days. I think the look that I'd be looking here would be the under, in my opinion. I mean, you have two of the most impressive defenses. Some issues with those injuries leave some question marks on the offensive side of it. And both are in the bottom 4 in terms of tempo. So neither one of them play, at that super fast pace. Some good defensive, teams on both sides of the court, or both benches, I should say. and some offensive question marks. So I'd be leaning the under, I think, in this one.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because you see some of these low totals like a 210.5, and a lot of people want to go over just because it's so low. But on the last show, when we were on here on Monday, we talked about the Cavs Raptors, and that was, I believe, 212 or 211.5, somewhere in that vicinity. And I loved the under in that play because, those are two very slow tempo teams, something very similar in this situation. Joel Embiid is one of the slower players throughout the NBA. It takes him a minute to get up and down the court. And so I definitely do like that underlook that you gave out there. But for me, I'm going a little bit of a different angle here. This is one of those games where I can see both sides. I can see the Cavs, they definitely need a win in this situation. And, the Philadelphia 76ers have been a team that have been running hot with a 3-game win streak. And the reason that I can't 100% get over the hump and maybe go with the Cleveland Cavaliers or the 76ers is just for the Cavs here, they have that hole in the middle without Jarrett Allen and without Kevin Love. They're both going to be missing in this matchup. And because of that, I'm actually going to pivot here, and I'm going to go with Joel Embiid over 30.5 points. I think this is a really good spot for Joel Embiid. And this Cleveland Cavaliers team, it's not like the Boston Celtics where they can go and double Joel Embiid and force him trouble, because the Cleveland Cavaliers just aren't as long as a team like the Celtics. They don't have defenders like that. A lot of their team revolves around Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, who aren't exactly the best defenders in the world. So because of that, Joel Embiid is going to be matched up with Robin Lopez, who is not the best defender in the world, can easily get him into foul trouble, and then another guy like Evan Mobley. And the Cleveland Cavaliers do not want Evan Mobley guarding Joel Embiid in this matchup due to the pure fact that if he gets in foul trouble, they don't have any big bodies or, further down that bench to come in and try and match with Joel Embiid. So I think Joel Embiid really is in a smash spot here. Embiid also loves playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. In his last 6 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, he's had 44 points, 35, 22, 40 points, and 42 points again. And in 5 of 6 of those games, they were all double-doubles on top of that. So because of that, again, I really do like the look of Joel Embiid over 30.5 points here. He came back last game, had 30 points on 18 shots, and is averaging just about 20 shots per game. So I do think he's going to have more volume in this matchup. And this is also a team that's still without Tyrese Maxey, James Harden. And, they have had guys elevate their play like DeAnthony Melton and Shake Milton. Tobias Harris has even been playing far more consistent than usual. So because of that, I'm going to be rocking the Joel Embiid over 30.5 points in this spot rather than going with a spread or over under. And just curious what you think of that look, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I like it. Actually, I didn't really think to look player prop at the individual game, but you convinced me too. And, I'll add, if Lamar Stevens is out, that even benefits you even more because he's one of the, better defensive guys that has the potential size to even compete with Embiid. You got a Coro who's one of the better defensive, but there's no way you're putting him out there unless Embiid's pulling up from outside the arc.
No, 100%. And today's one of those days where I really do like a lot of player props. And guys, if you're watching right now in the chat, hit us with your best bets. Hit us with some of your favorite player props. I see our boy Ronald Cabang over in the chat. Appreciate our fearless leader tuning into the show. So definitely check that out. And I think that covers enough for the first game. So we're going to move on to the second. And our second game is going to be the Raptors versus Pelicans. This is a Pelicans +2 spread with a 221.5 over under. And the Toronto Raptors are finally back to kind of full go. They have their entire starting lineup back with Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, and Pascal Siakam. And if you watched the Raptors' last game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, man, Pascal Siakam did not miss a beat. He came in and absolutely balled, and it was pretty impressive to see how fast that lineup just meshed and came right back together. And I guess when you see this team on the court, or you even see the lineup just in full go as a depth chart, it's a pretty impressive starting lineup. And for this one, Jeff, I'll start off with this one. And because I do like this game, when you look at the Pelicans here, the Pelicans are still going to be without CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, but we'll have guys like Zion Williamson and Jonas Valanciunas full go and ready to roll. And if you guys have been paying attention to the show, you definitely know I like playing spots. You definitely know I like playing that injury replacement theory. But I don't think this is a spot where I'm going to do that. You know, when CJ McCollum is out, CJ McCollum is the point guard, the primary ball handler, has been out for a while, so I do understand that. But when Brandon Ingram is out on top of that, he's kind of that second guy who takes up a lot of the ball handling responsibilities, bringing it up the court, getting his teammates involved, things of that nature. And it's tough for me to put all of my trust in maybe like Jose Alvarado, Devontae Graham, or Trey Murphy III, you know. And when you look on the other side with the Raptors, you know, they got Fred VanVleet bringing that thing up every single time. They got guys like Gary Trent, and then they have long, lengthy defenders like OG Anunoby and Scotty Barnes, you know. So it's going to be a tough spot for this Pelicans team. And when you dive in a little deeper, these are two very similar teams. You know, the New Orleans Pelicans are 4th in adjusted net rating, with the Raptors only a couple spots behind them, coming in 8th overall. And when you're missing two guys like CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, who are two of their top usage guys, two of their top shot creators, point getters, a little bit of everything, I think they're in a tougher spot here. And with the Raptors getting their full team back in full go, essentially, I think they're gonna kind of want to come out, gel, get some synergy going early, and ball against this Pelican squad. So for me, I do like the look of the Pelicans here, or of the Raptors here. I'm sorry, but I don't know if this is going to be a premium play for me. I think there are other games and player props on this slate that I like a little bit more. But if I were to go anywhere, I think it would be the Pelicans. And Jeff, curious what your thoughts are here.
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely another interesting one. You know, you said it, the injuries again are coming into play as of a concern. But, you know, the one thing that does kind of catch my attention is one thing I like to look at is balanced teams. You know, you play on both sides of the ball. You have to win on both sides of the court if you're going to do it consistently. And New Orleans is one of only two teams that rate or rank in the top 7 in offensive and defensive rating on the season. The other one's Cleveland, but they're they're fourth overall, as you mentioned. They're 7th offensively, and they're 6th defensively. So they really are kind of one of the more balanced teams, one of the more consistent teams getting it done on both sides. But I was looking specifically at how these teams kind of match up overall statistically, and they match up to a point that it looks like both of them could potentially shut the other down. You know, Toronto struggles in just basic field goal percentage, but a majority of their shots have come from inside 5 feet. So they're shooting right under the basket. They're not taking shots from deep. They're not risking that as much as some of the other teams are. But that's New Orleans' worst aspect of defense. I mean, they're 26th in the league defending the shot inside 5 feet. But on the other side of the ball, New Orleans is also taking 41% of their shots inside 5 feet, so a very high percentage, 2nd in the league. But they're 5th in three-point shooting percentage, you know, on the season as a team. So Toronto's done pretty well against that. So I do find myself statistically siding with Toronto. You know, a couple trends that I did find that did definitely catch my attention. Toronto 14-1 in the last 2 years when playing on the road, coming off 2 or more consecutive wins. So they're getting that 3rd plus win on the road a majority of the time because they're winning by 7 points per game. Not only are they 14-1 against the spread, they're winning those games straight up. And they're 37-19 against the spread versus teams with a winning record in the last 2 years too. So Toronto has been getting it done against the teams that mattered, been getting it done in the big situations. And with the injuries, you know, regardless that I did say I like this New Orleans team, it's not going to be a premium play on my end either. But I do agree. I wouldn't find myself looking any way other than Toronto in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too, because, you know, the Toronto Raptors did open up as a dog and now have moved to a favorite, you know, and I don't know if any of that has to do with any of the injury news or anything along those lines, or people have just been hitting the Raptors like that, you know, because for me, when I look at this, you know, when you look at this Toronto Raptors squad and when they are fully healthy and full go, they are a threat offensively, but more importantly, they're a bigger threat defensively. You know, guys like OG Anunoby and Scotty Barnes, they are very long, lengthy defenders and good at shot blocking as well. So I do think that's a big thing here, and especially with guys like CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram being out, two guys who can create their own shot, and Brandon Ingram being one of the longer length NBA players as well. I think that's a big factor because, you know, the guys who are backing them up now are Jose Alvarado and Devontae Graham, who are two smaller style guards, 6 foot to 6'2" style shooting guards. So I think that's a factor in this game, and I think that's definitely a good look. But like you said, I think there's some better spots on this slate, and we're going to move on to one of the games that's my personal favorite. You know, you guys hear me talk about same game parlays, you know, my DFS background, stuff like that. And this is one of those games that you definitely look for, and you just hope that it can live up to the hype. And this is the Indiana Pacers against the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings come into this matchup with a -4.5 spread attached to their name and a 242 total. Okay, so 242.5 actually. So this is way up there. And again, just one of those spots where you kind of hope it can live up to the hype. And the Pacers come into this matchup essentially fully healthy, except for Chris Duarte, who is somewhat of their outside shooter, but he's been out a while now. And this is a Pacers team who has surprisingly won 7 of their last 9 games, holding a respectable 12-8 record. As for the Sacramento Kings, they hold a 10-9 record and have now lost 3 games in a row and are looking for the right spot to correct this ship. Jeff, do you think they correct this ship against the Indiana Pacers tonight?
You know, I think this is probably their best opportunity. You know, Indiana, you said it, they've been running hot even beyond that 9-game stretch that you mentioned. 11-4 in the last 15, and they're 12-3 against the spread over that run too. But Indiana's hit a little bit of a hiccup. You know, I said 11-4 in the last 15, but they're 2-2 in the last 4. So they've lost 2 of those 4 games over a span of just the last 4 games. And Sacramento's lost 3 in a row, like you mentioned. You know, they were 9-1 against the spread in a 10-game run before that. They failed to cover these 3 previous games as well. And prior to that 3-game losing streak, they were on a 7-game win streak. So they lost when they lost on Monday, they lost as a favorite against Phoenix. So this Sacramento team was grant they were at home. They still shot over 52% in that game against the Suns and ended up losing. But the fact that 1, they were a favorite against the Suns, regardless of the site, and 2, they shot over 52% against the Suns, you know, is a little bit of a bright spot despite the loss. And, you know, this offense has shown you that they can explode in pretty much any game. They're putting up 123 points per game and 52.7% shooting on their home court this season. So any opportunity, they can potentially wake up. And, you know, they have had very similar seasons. The one thing that, you know, looking at the last 2 weeks, like I had mentioned before, Indiana's been running hot, you know, on both aspects. 5-3 against the spread, but they're 6-2 straight up. Their offense is actually a little bit worse over that span. They're 2.4 points per game less than they're averaging on the season, but their defense has kind of accommodated, and they're holding teams to 4 points below their season average. But Sacramento is just 3-3 straight up and just 2-4 against the spread in those games. But they haven't really, you know, they've played some good teams and their numbers aren't drastically worse on either side of the ball. So it's not like they're giving up a crazy more amount of points or, you know, scoring a whole lot less. They're just not losing, or they're just not winning the games that they need to. So, you know, I do think that this is a situation that Sacramento should bounce out of, or is an opportunity to take advantage of it. But I do think it's an interesting game that a lot of people don't pay attention to. You know, we quickly said before the show that, or at least I personally think that these are probably 2 of the most underrated teams in the NBA. So, you know, they're starting to prove themselves, and there's obviously, I think that line against Phoenix shows that at least Sacramento's starting to get a little bit of respect to its name too. So, interesting matchup.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The Sacramento Kings were definitely a team that I wasn't expecting to potentially have a winning record at this point in time, or even be so consistent offensively against even tough defensive-minded teams. And I would say the same thing for the Indiana Pacers, although I do think the Indiana Pacers have benefited from somewhat a little bit easier of competition, but still, I didn't expect them to beat the Lakers, in their last matchup, and they went out and got that done. So it is. It's one of those scenarios where do you start adding a little more respect to the Indiana Pacers now that they're on this winning streak, or do you kind of side with the Kings here to correct that ship? And for me, I'm rocking with the Sacramento Kings here. And like we talked about before, this is probably my favorite game on the slate. I like a lot of opportunity. I like a lot of volume. And that's exactly what this game has. I love it for same game parlay potential. And I love it for finding good spots for some player props. And actually, my best bet will be from this game. We're looking to make it 5 best bets in a row. But I also do like this spot for the Sacramento Kings. We talked about the Sacramento Kings losing 3 games in a row. And as for the Indiana Pacers, they're coming off a win against the Los Angeles Lakers and have actually won 7 of their last 9 games. And when you take a look at these two teams, they're actually very, very similar. One team is led by Tyrese Halliburton, who does, little bit of everything all over the court, getting his teammates involved, attacking the basket, rebounding a little bit, getting steals. Then you have another guy like Tyrese Halliburton on the Indiana Pacers, who's kind of the same thing for them. But again, when you look at these rosters top to bottom, they're very similar. I just think the Kings are better. The Kings have a better overall adjusted net rating when they are 14th throughout the NBA, and the Pacers are 19th. And then you take a look at the pace. Indiana comes in at 5th. The Kings come in at 6th, so damn near dead on with the pace as well. And then the Kings have the 3rd best offense with the 28th ranked adjusted defense. The Pacers 12th ranked offense and the 21st ranked defense. So again, very, very similar, but for me, a key matchup in this game is actually going to be Tyrese Halliburton against Davion Mitchell. And you also have to remember, there is some revenge narrative in this game. Tyrese Halliburton was traded from the Sacramento Kings to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis. And honestly, I would assume both sides are pretty happy about it now. It's worked out pretty well. But if you're Tyrese Halliburton, you still want to try and come out and ball against the Sacramento Kings team. But with that being said, I think the Kings have the defender who can potentially slow him down a little bit in Davion Mitchell. Obviously, when you see a total like that, you don't expect him to get slowed down all that much. But Davion is one of the best guard defenders throughout the NBA. He's very pesky. He moves his feet incredibly well, and he's a pest more than anything. He reminds me somewhat of Marcus Smart. He can get in your head a little bit. And Tyrese is one of those guys for the Indiana Pacers where if you can slow him down even a little bit, your team has a good chance of covering that spread and winning that game outright. And because of that, when I look at the opposing side with someone like De'Aaron Fox and who's going to guard De'Aaron, you have Tyrese Halliburton, who's actually one of the worst rated guards in terms of defending throughout the NBA with a 112 defensive adjusted rating. And to put that in perspective, Bojan Bogdanovic has a 122 defensive rating and is the worst in the NBA. So just 10 points apart there. And then if he's not guarding him, it could be Buddy Hield, and Buddy Hield ain't much better. And with De'Aaron Fox, De'Aaron Fox has missed some of his numbers a couple games in a row. So I think he's also looking at this like a great bounce back spot. And again, we will talk about that in the best bets. But because of that, I'm rocking with the Sacramento Kings here. And I think they're going to cover this minus 4.5 point spread. Do you think you got any comments about that, Jeff?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say you led me into one thing that I did forget. I didn't look at the actual number because I saw this report right before we jumped on here, but I do want to take a peek at Tyrese Halliburton's assist numbers because he's got 6 straight games with double-digit assists too, and that could be a look because to your point about potentially slowing him down, he is still a smart-minded offensive player, so if he can't score or gets slowed down in some aspects scoring, he's still smart with the ball, and he could be looking to get his 7th straight game with that double-digit assist number too.
Yeah, 100%. And one statistic that I did forget to leave out too is on the season, the Kings are 10-1 against the spread with 1 day of rest. They once again have 1 day of rest here coming in against the Indiana Pacers, so that holds true as well. So I do think it's a solid spot for the Sacramento Kings here with the minus 4.5. I was on this line last night looking at it, and it hasn't really budged that much. I actually kind of thought some people might be on the Kings here, but maybe not. I guess we'll have to sit and wait till tip-off. But with that being said, let's get into the best bet segment segment, I'm going to keep this rolling just because I was already talking Kings. And my best bet is from the Sacramento Kings. And guys, we've hit 4 of these in a row, looking to make it 5. If you got any best bets, feel free to leave those in the comments. We'd love seeing yours as well. But for me tonight, my best bet is going to be De'Aaron Fox over 23.5 points. And like I touched on before, you have a Kings team who has been impressive thus far this season, especially on the offensive end, but has now lost 3 straight games. When you've lost 3 straight games, you're the favored home team and you're going against a team like the Indiana Pacers. I've got to think that you are going to go with your star player in De'Aaron Fox to help right that ship and also help to get him back on track. I don't think it's any surprise that the Sacramento Kings have lost 3 games in a row in games that De'Aaron Fox has not played well. In addition to that, these 3 games in a row that De'Aaron Fox has missed is his longest of the season. This is also the only time De'Aaron Fox has missed multiple games other than 2. Okay, so this is far longer than before. I think he's going to correct the ship here. And in addition to that, when you look at De'Aaron Fox a little bit more in those 3 games, he took 49 shots. Okay. Of those 49 shots, he made 26% from the field and 29% from 3. This is a key factor because De'Aaron Fox is actually one of the most efficient basketball players throughout the NBA. He's shooting 51% from the field and 38% from 3. So again, it's just tough to keep a player like that down for long. We talked about this with Devin Booker on Monday, and Devin Booker went out and smashed and had a 44-point outing. These are stars. These are guys that are going to get their shots, that consistently make it at a high percentage. When you've gone off the rails for 2 games, 3 games, again, like I've said, I'm going to be that guy to back you your 4th game, your 5th game. And then in addition to that, when you peel that onion a little bit more, De'Aaron Fox is going against Tyrese Halliburton, like I talked about before. He has a defensive rating of 112.3, one of the worst throughout the NBA. And I think De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton are going to have this like a big brother, little brother thing here. Because again, there is that revenge narrative. And part of the reason Tyrese Halliburton got moved was because he's very similar to what De'Aaron Fox does. So they moved Tyrese Halliburton to make De'Aaron Fox happy. They brought in Domantas Sabonis. So this is a game where De'Aaron Fox has to prove, okay, you made the right decision in moving Tyrese Halliburton to the Indiana Pacers. And I'm going to come out and ball tonight. So that's one thing. I really like that angle as well. And then one last thing with the Indiana Pacers here. They rank 22nd throughout the league in turnovers. De'Aaron Fox is one of those players who has pretty sticky hands. He can jump those passing lanes. He can just straight up rip you, averaging 1.2 steals per game. Wouldn't be surprised if he got a steal or 2 and got some fast break buckets or something along those lines. And, earlier in the season, De'Aaron Fox had a number around 25.5, 26.5. And now that he's come back down to earth, so has the line. So now I think it's time that we take advantage. This is going to be an official play for me over on SportsMemo as well. And guys, let's hit 5 in a row here. I think De'Aaron Fox lands for us, 23.5 points going over. D-Fox is the best bet for today. Jeff, got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that. I said, we were chit-chatting it up a little bit beforehand, and I really do like that look. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game regardless of what side you like. And, I think that while I obviously agree with every point you made, because it all does make sense to me completely, seeing as I was on Sacramento too, even if you're on Indiana, even if you don't agree with the Sacramento aspect, there's still potential for De'Aaron Fox to obviously come out and have that number too. So I do. I like that look a lot.
Sweet, man. Love it when we're all on the same page. And, I really am liking this Kings and Pacers game tonight. I love those pace-up spots. I love a lot of points. I love games that give you opportunity to go and cash your player props and same-game parlays, things like that. If you're playing DFS tonight as well, this is definitely a game to keep an eye on. But, Jeff, what's your best bet for tonight?
Yeah, I'm looking at another one that could be a potential same-game parlay one and another exciting matchup. I'm going to keep it to the first half. But I'm looking at the Memphis Grizzlies minus a point over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Timberwolves without Cat now, and there's signs pointing to Memphis coming from both directions on this one. I mean, if you guys have followed me on Twitter, I put my logs up there the other day. I've been working on, I've been updating them. Only 3 games last night, so I will probably put them up again, hopefully today, get you some updated numbers. But Memphis 10-3 in the first half against the spread over the last 13, and it really does come from both sides. They're 8-1 in the last 9 as a favorite in the first half. Minnesota hasn't covered a first half as an underdog yet. Memphis is 5-1 in the first half in the last 6 on the road, including 3 straight. Minnesota has dropped 4 straight at home against the spread in the first half, and they're only 1-6 in the last 7. I mean, this Memphis team is putting up over 61 points per game in the first half. I mean, you look at it, that averages out to 122 points. They're not even averaging that for the game. So recently, they're getting a lot of their production early in those games. And Minnesota's defense is allowing points in the first half too. So they're struggling to defend early. They're allowing nearly 63 points. And these two teams did meet relatively recently. You look back at that one back on November 11th. Oh yeah, Memphis put up just a measly little 72 points in the first half of that one. So they got to them early in that one, and Minnesota hasn't really gotten a whole lot better in the first half since. I mean, you look at their last 2 games. Golden State, 76 points in the first half. Washington Wizards in the last game put up 77 points in the first half. So their last 2 games, they're allowing 76.5 points per game in the first half, which, if you do the math quickly, comes out to 152 points for the entirety of the game, and they failed to cover those first halves by 19 points on average. So some bad production, at least in the last 2 games, especially out of Minnesota. And they're playing against a Memphis team that has came out of the gate hot going back to the last 13 games. So definitely back in Memphis in the first half, and they got no cat, so that helps.
Yeah, I definitely like that spot and definitely agree with you there, because with the Memphis Grizzlies and even the first quarter or first half, they've been absolutely smashing that this season. And it kind of reminds me of the Golden State Warriors with the third quarter. You know, the Golden State Warriors are one of those teams who always go out and smash the third quarter, the point spread, the money line, anything along those. And it's kind of one of those spots where you just ride the train till it falls off the tracks. You know, the Memphis Grizzlies haven't given you a reason not to take them in the first half or the first quarter. And this is another one of those spots, because anytime you go against the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's going to be a pace-up spot with very little defense. And the Memphis Grizzlies and the Minnesota Timberwolves are very similar teams. And, you know, and it's kind of like the Kings Pacers, like I was saying. I just think the Kings are better. It's the same thing here. I just think the Grizzlies are better. And they're one of those teams that really can get out and run, attack you early. Ja Morant. You know, one player I would look at here, though, is definitely Anthony Edwards going forward without Cat. I think that's going to be an interesting angle. I think he's going to get a lot more volume, opportunity going forward. And it's, for one, I think the dynamic of the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to be something interesting to look at. Do you think they'll be worse with just Gobert or better with just Gobert?
I don't know. I think the game that they play is going to obviously have to change a little bit.
Yeah.
If they click, if Gobert can get back to what he was, I mean, in that whole aspect, Gobert's the big question mark. How he clicks in a bigger role again, like he once had in a new situation. And if he clicks, they could potentially be better.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm 100% with you too. And what up, Star Child saying what up in the chat. And, you know, it's one of those spots where, don't get me wrong, Karl Anthony Towns helps any team. Any team. He's a scorer, he's a rebounder, he's an all-star, you know. But that dynamic that the Minnesota Timberwolves put together with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns clogging up that middle together, it just hasn't been great. So I'm personally interested to see what this Timberwolves team looks like as the court is spaced out a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Should be interesting to see if they can play that Evan Mobley, Jared Allen middle.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really it for the show. Again, guys, let's go over the best bets one more time. You know, I had De'Aaron Fox over 23.5 points, and Jeff had.
Yeah, I'm going Memphis in the first half, only giving a point.
All right, and I love that. And Jeff, anything you got going over on the Sports Memo side you want to promote a little bit, tell people where to follow you, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I do have one college basketball play up, looking at an NBA action or two that may be going to, but we did have a rough day yesterday. going to take a day to reevaluate that college basketball a little bit and see what we missed. But we are probably going to have some NBA action up today too after this show.
Hey, love to hear it. I already got my NBA up, and it's been a even week, guys. I'm 4-4 on the week. I'm up 4 units though, which means the best bets are hitting. You know, this best bet segment, I've hit 4 in a row. We're looking to make it 5. Would love to keep that going. And as always, we greatly appreciate you stopping by the NBA Sports Memo Triple Double Show. Go check all of our cappers out on Sports Memo. We miss our fearless leader in Ronald Cabang. He's got some plays over there. Feel free to go and check that out. And make sure to follow myself on Twitter at Moneyline Matt and Jeff Michaels at JM Sports Cleveland. Because every single day, guys, we're going out angles. We're putting out picks, plays, a little bit of everything. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of spots tonight. Real quick, check out Kyrie Irving. Check out Paulo Banchero. Check out Anthony Edwards. And, of course, check out De'Aaron Fox. Those are my 4 looks for tonight. Let's get after it. Let's cash. Good luck, everyone. I appreciate you stopping by. We are out.